A lot of fun stuff to get to at the top, but let's not belabor everything too much. I'll be taking questions in just a second. But first, I wanted to start by talking about this story that has been reported by Reuters. Luckily, a lot of people in left media have been covering it. Um, but I've been surprised that this hasn't become a major national news story yet. And that is the story that Hyundai has been employing child laborers at one of their contractor facilities in Alabama. And the more you read about this story, I highly suggest people check it out. It's you can find it on Reuters. The title is Hyundai subsidiary has used child labor at Alabama factory by Joshua Schneier, Mika Rosenberg, and Christina Cook. Highly suggest people check that story out because that's like public service journalism at its best. It's a horrible story, but it's one of those things, as we'll get to in a second, that had been known at least by the government for a good while now, and they were not acting on it. So I'm very thankful for those journalists at Reuters for digging this up and putting this out there to the public. I think it's a bit shameful, frankly, that this is still mainly being covered by left independent media and isn't really becoming a major national news story because this is a scandal through and through, and it touches at a lot of different things, that are very endemic into our current modern capitalist hellscape. But just to fill people in, if you haven't seen this at all, um, in Alabama, according to area police, there was a family that had three underage workers who were working at this facility making parts for Hyundai. Eight former and current employees of the factory have also corroborated this story as well. So the point is that people knew. It wasn't like, oh, somebody lied on their application or something like that. And I'm sorry, friends. Um, One of the people who was employed there was probably as young as 12. Um, Somebody fucking knew higher up, and they were trying to sweep this under the rug. Now, this company, the subsidiary of Hyundai, has already been fined by OSHA for egregious workplace violations, including a high risk for amputations. Now, I want that to sink in for a second when we talk about the severity of this. Skirting child labor laws in the first place is absolutely disgusting. Children should be being kids, being in school, and we as a society should be providing for people so that families don't get themselves into a situation where they're trying to look to their kids, to help make ends meet at the end of the month. So it's egregious enough just on the fact that it's child labor, but when you read about the state of this facility and how dangerous it is for adults, even, it's scandalous. This is quoting from the Reuters piece. The smart plant builds parts for the popular Elantra, Sonata, and Santa Fe models, vehicles that through June accounted for almost 37% of Hyundai's U.S. sales, according to the car maker. The factory has received repeated OSHA penalties for health and safety violations, federal records show. And I just want to note for people who might not be familiar with how OSHA operates, OSHA is an arm of the U.S. government that basically looks after workplace safety violations, right? Making sure that companies are not skirting labor law, aren't putting their employees in undue danger to produce the products that they produce. But remember that OSHA is incredibly lax. Like many things in our federal government, it is not the first one to start sprinting to look out for working people. So the fact that OSHA has come down heavy-handed against these people in the past, and you're going to be surprised at how lax it even sounds then. The actual numbers of fines that they've gotten for some of the other violations that they've been proven guilty on. Just remember that like this is exceptional in its own case because OSHA very rarely is an organization that's going to be getting involved in this kind of way. But quoting again from the piece, a Reuters review of the records shows Smart has been assessed with at least $48,515 in OSHA penalties since 2013 and was most recently fined this year. OSHA inspections at Smart have documented violations, including crush and amputation hazards at the factory. Now, I want to just say the focus of this story is about the egregious use of child labor at this facility. But also remember what we're talking about here, that there's a significant risk for adult workers to be crushed or to face amputation because of the dangerous conditions at this facility, right? And even with that being proven, they're only getting fined something like $50,000. frankly, a slap on the wrist. And it's a real shame the state of our labor enforcement in this country that something like that can be brought to light and the penalties are so lax. It's absolutely shameful. We haven't seen very much so far in terms of punishment for this organization. Um, I'm sorry, people should be in jail. Facility managers should be in jail. The company executives should be in jail. They should face steep penalties. And it just shows how weak and lax the already existing laws on the books are when you're getting, exposed for putting your workers in extremely dangerous conditions and you're getting a slap on the wrist $50,000 fine. Now, Hyundai, Korean company, said to Reuters that they do not tolerate illegal employment practices at any Hyundai entity. Quote, we have policies and procedures in place that require compliance with all local, state, and federal laws. It didn't answer detailed questions from Reuters about the findings. And we'll get back to Hyundai in a second, and the fact that, this being a subsidiary and not like a direct factory, excuse me, is one of the kind of weaselly ways that companies like this get around their abusive practices by saying, oh, we hired the wrong guy, we're going to punish them. It's not our company's values. It 100% is. That's why they hire these subsidiaries to do this kind of shit in the first place. And I just want to remind folks about the severity of this. One of the young people who was working at this facility turns 14 this month, and her two brothers are aged 12 and 15. They all worked at the plant earlier this year and weren't going to school, according to people familiar with their employment. I mean, this just reeks to fucking high heaven. It's unbelievable that we're sitting here talking about something like that in the year of 2022. Unfortunately, it's not unique. Now, there are different kind of carve outs that companies get to do this, but it should be notable for folks, and I didn't mention it before, that this is a family of immigrants, Guatemalan immigrants coming to this country, and that is a target of companies like Hyundai and most capitals in this country is to find people who are in precarious positions, find people who might not have the social networks to protect them if they were to sort of push back against a company like this. They want people who are fearful for their status in this country. They want to be able to use forces like ICE to come and threaten people. And this, unfortunately, is not unique just to this Hyundai facility. In particular, in agriculture, there are carve outs that allow young people to be working at those facilities. They have some rules, things like that, but they are often ignored, and those workers are absolutely abused. And it is that immigration status, it is that lack of citizenship that these companies try to use to undermine labor law, basic human dignity. So focus on this Alabama thing. Hyundai should be getting a hell of a lot more heat than it's getting right now. But also remember that child labor in the United States of America is nowhere near extinct. It is a pernicious practice, and it is oftentimes targeted at people who feel that they have the least amount of legal recourse because the society and the elected officials in this country constantly demonize them, because we effectively have an armed Gestapo running around the country. I'm talking about ICE here, which the Supreme Court has now said can basically overturn all of your basic rights if you're within a certain distance of the U.S. border, which now includes a vast majority of the populated areas of this country, right? It's not unreasonable that people feel like they don't have recourse, because when you see the way that OSHA acts, and two, you see the failure of the government in this case to seriously come down on Hyundai and the people responsible for this, people do not feel like they will be heard if they try to bring these things to light. I'm going to play just a couple minutes from our friends at Valley Labor Report, because they've covered this story very well. I think if you're not listening to our good friends there, you should be. They put together an amazing program. But here they are talking about the Attorney General of Alabama, because this gets to a lot of different issues that I think are worth talking about right now. This has been known for a while, at least by the Attorney General's office, certainly by people working in that facility, and absolutely known by management. And they have done little to nothing so far. And I just wanted to play this a little bit right here, because I think it really highlights the priorities of the Republican Party, and the failure of our administrative state to make sure that things as egregious as child labor are not happening within this country. I'll jump over there right now.
Quoting from the article, Reuters learned of underage workers at the Hyundai-owned supplier following the brief disappearance in February of a Guatemalan migrant child from her family's home in Alabama. The police force in Enterprise, which is about 45 miles from the plant in Laverne, doesn't have jurisdiction to investigate possible labor law violations at the factory. Instead, the force notified the state attorney general's office after the incident. James Sanders, an Enterprise police detective, told Reuters. Mike Lewis, a spokesperson at the Alabama Attorney General's office, declined to comment. It's unclear whether the office or other investigators have contacted Smart or Hyundai about possible violations. 5 months! 5 months! They're sitting on this story for 5 months. The Attorney General's office has known about this issue for 5 months, and the only reason we know about it is because of Reuters. The only reason we know about it is because of Reuters. Let's contrast this total and complete lack of urgency, lack of moral clarity, lack of giving a damn about Hyundai exploiting children in a plant in Alabama with amputation hazards, with his recent comments on Google. The Attorney General of the state of Alabama, the highest enforcer of the law in the state, unprompted, nobody asked him to do this, joined a letter with other state attorneys general who also apparently have nothing else better to do, stating that if Google does not give them the search results they want, they might sue. I mean, talk about
priorities.
I mean, good God. Talk about misplaced priorities. What about abortion? What's his urgency been like on this issue? Well, according to Parker Snyder, yet another columnist for Koch-funded, flat earth, military coup, crypto bro boosting propaganda outlet 1819 News, around 9:15 a.m. on Friday, June 24th, news of the court's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization overruling Roe v. Wade reached Alabama. At 10:37 a.m., Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall released a statement promising that his office was immediately filing motions to dissolve any injunctions against, quote, pro-life bills held up in the court system.
Yeah, and I think the anger from Jacob and Adam there is on point. I mean, it's horrific, and they get to it later in that segment that I highly suggest people watch. I highly suggest people read the Reuters article in its full. But people knew, and it's very likely that they've been employing underage workers, more underage workers than just these 3 children who was just revealed were engaged there, right? So this is a prolonged problem that has only been brought to light because of the journalists at Reuters, despite the Attorney General of Alabama knowing about this. Now, there's a lot that we can get to, but I wanted to up the point about the Republican Party in Alabama, because it mirrors the Republican Party in states like Texas and all across the South. Their failure to stand up for everyday people in their state is not only egregious, it's a part of their basic political posturing. What do I mean here? Why are all of these car companies moving to the South? Now, people who might not be following the industry closely might not know about this, but there has been a very, very large growth in the automobile industry in states like Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, and Texas over recent years. Why is it that they're so interested in getting Southern labor? Now, as much as I would love to, for it to be they like the culture and the people down there, no. They know that they can go there and they can abuse people, and the government won't do shit about it. Because the government is very, very willing to sell out working people to international corporations and domestic corporations in this country. And that is the deal that they make with him. We're ununionized. We won't enforce labor law, and we'll turn a blind eye and slow up the system if anything egregious ever does come out. That's the game that they're playing. That's what they're selling you when you have these conservative politicians saying, look at all the jobs that are moving to our state right now. All these companies want to be in our state. They're doing that at your expense. They're doing that at your expense, at your family's expense, at your neighbor's expense, and at people who are coming through the state, immigrants who are coming through the state, who they hope they can abuse for a few years and then push them on out, either through deportation or they might just leave because they can't continue living in that area anymore. Right? That's the kind of people that these Republican politicians are bringing into your state. They're not looking out for jobs. They're not looking out for the economy. They're not trying to give you dignity at work. They're trying to protect the profits of extremely powerful corporations like Hyundai. And it should make you sick to your stomach. And the next time you hear this nonsense about pro-worker Republicans, you should laugh at their face. Not that the Democratic Party gives them much more of a shit about working people than they do, but just remember when they're talking about economic development and bringing new jobs into your community, they're not trying to bring good jobs to your community. They're trying to take advantage of you because they think you're a chump. That's it. The people in power think that working people in the South are chumps and they'll just accept whatever bullshit they throw at them. It's absolutely disgusting. 5 months they knew about this shit. This is the most basic kind of thing. This isn't squishy left politics kind of stuff. Should we be employing children at facilities where they can have their arms amputated by unsafe machines, where they can be crushed by a machine? This is bullshit, frankly, to be sitting here talking about right now. It fills me with fucking rage. The other point, and then I'm going to open it up to questions and comments. I'd love to, hear what y'all are thinking about this or anything else on your mind. The other thing that you have to remember, and I noted it before, but it's not an accident that this is a family of immigrants, because as I said before, these companies prey on people who they think are not going to be connected enough to stand up and fight back when their rights are being so egregiously infringed as they are in Alabama, as they are across this country right now. ICE is an arm of the capitalist state. ICE is an arm of the capitalist state. They use ICE to threaten people. Now, this is a story, and I'm going to keep people's names out of it, but just to paint a picture for folks. I'll never forget this moment because it was a good friend of mine, somebody who I love very deeply. And I won't give you all the details, but he was a member of my soccer team growing up. And something happened where an official, a referee, basically abused him during the game and hit him. Just unbelievable kind of thing to happen at a school sporting event. And when the family tried to push back and to get justice done, they took the young man, my friend, my teammate, whose family had immigrated to this country, and they asked them about their immigration status. And when they got silence back from the family, they said, "We will notify ICE if you try to pursue any case against the school district or this official." And they had to sit on it. The family had to sit on it because they were being threatened with basically having their lives uprooted and being thrown into a country again where my friend had spent very little time in, right? And there are worse things that happen out there, but that's just an example of how that immigration status is used by people in power to silence rightful grievances that people have. And it's the same kind of threat that was sort of floating over the heads of that family. Because of the lack of social support on the national level and certainly on the state level in Alabama, they were put into a very difficult situation. And I'm not going to sit here and moralize about what the family should have done or what they shouldn't have done. I'm going to recognize the structural issues that create that kind of opportunity for a corporation like Hyundai to come in there and try to profit and abuse people because of that system. That is a part of the business plan. It is not an accident. It's not some random guy, being extremely cruel just because of a fault in their soul. They're being extremely cruel and evil and wicked because they work in a system that says we are going to put profit above everything else. And these, particularly these subsidiary companies, are so nasty. They abuse people, not just in Alabama, they abuse them across the country, and particularly in the auto industry, they put people into extremely dangerous situations, adults on a daily basis. And in the case of this facility in Alabama, they're putting children in that situation. So the next time you hear one of these fucking Republicans running their mouth off about how they're bringing jobs to Alabama or Tennessee or South Carolina or Texas, you point to this case and say, that's what you're bringing here. You don't care about working people in this state. And I think it's so crucial as the Republican Party is trying to, rebrand itself as a party of the cares of working people. Remind folks that what they care about is doing symbolic stuff like freaking out about Google and Disney, right? Or restricting women's basic rights in this country. They care about that so much more than about doing their basic damn job to enforce the law of the land in this country. I mean, these people make me so sick when you think about them, right? Jeff Sessions, remember him? One of those characters that we need rule of law in the United States of America, right? Where are these motherfuckers when the rule of law is being egregiously broken right there? They sat on this case for 5 months, and the only reason we're talking about it right now is not because it came out, because the Attorney General of Alabama was investigating them or doing something about it. It was because journalists got a tip, because so many people who are working the lines realized that there were 12, 13, 14-year-old immigrant children working the lines next to them. An absolute joke.